welcome everyone. Thanks for joining me today. You are at the home of the free-minded patriots, J.R. Dukes at your service. And of course, my mission is to help you live your best life possible by ending that dreaded disease of indoctrination. On this channel here, we are all about cutting through that noise and reviewing all the top stories and things that affect our daily lives, politics, the law, asset protection, dealing with the police. That's what we're all about. So thanks for being here today. Want to say hello real quick to everyone who is joining us. Thank you on the X platform. Looks like it's working good. Hello to our friends on Twitch and, of course, on YouTube. Thank you all so much for being here. Making sure everybody can hear me just fine. If you are new to the chat, please take a moment, introduce yourself, and say hello. If you'd like to join us to make a comment or to join us live via video, or if you just want to call in, feel free to do so at the link that's in your chat right now. Easy peasy. Got a lot to talk about today. Lots going on in the world. And I have a very interesting case for us all to talk about tonight. I think y'all will find it very interesting. Been talking about some time with, how free speech is under attack. Donald Trump's been talking about this a lot too. And make no mistake about it, free speech is under attack all over the world. And I have a case that I'm going to bring to you today that frankly is shocking. And ladies and gentlemen, very few things truly shock me. But this is somewhat shocking, if I'm being honest with you. Hello to Sapphire. Appreciate you joining us today, my friend Mark, all the way from the great state of Montana. Appreciate you being here. And of course, my friend Julianne, thank you for being here, Julianne. Definitely appreciate you being here, young lady. And also, of course, we always appreciate when Rosemarie Fiera can join us. It's always a pleasure having you in the chat too, young lady. Thank you for being here. And of course, my friend Zach, of course you're here. Thank you for being here, Zach. Enjoyed chatting with you earlier on Sapphire Ridge's channel. If y'all have not checked his channel out, when you get some time to do so, it's simply at Sapphire Ridge News. So check out my friend Mark on his channel. But thanks again for everybody being here today. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to start drilling down into what's going on. I do want to tell you real quickly, I got a few new things coming to the channel. I should have it perfected in the next day or two. It's going to be the opening of my own store, which I'm pretty happy about. I think it's going to be pretty cool. So if you're interested in that, and I'm also working on some membership deals so that we could meet in smaller groups and kind of have a little more quality time face to face. I just got some different things. I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag yet, but I am working on many different things, and I think y'all will like the changes that are coming to the channel. At any rate, this Christmas season, I hope everybody is having a wonderful Christmas time. I think, what are we now, like 9 days from Christmas? It's amazing how fast it goes year to year, doesn't it, folks? Just older I get, the faster it goes by. No doubt about it. Y'all like this background? I've been trying to put some Christmas backgrounds on there. And by the way, on this channel, we say Merry Christmas. Whatever you celebrate, I'm happy to celebrate that also, but I say Merry Christmas. I'm a Christian, and that's what I like to say. So Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy Hanukkah, whatever's going on in your life. Thanks for being here. All right, we're going to drill down into it right now. Here we go. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at the J.R. Dukes feed, and then we're going to jump right into the big story of today. I think you guys are going to enjoy this story, as I have enjoyed doing some considerable research into this story. Now, today was a great day for President Donald Trump. He gave his first, I would guess you would call it an official newscast, a press conference, and I thought he did an excellent job. One thing about Donald Trump, this being the second time around, he is truly Trump 2.0. Something we have talked about in this channel a long time ago when Donald Trump first started running for his second term. I think it was a gift of God, to be honest with you. The fact, on some weird way, a lot of times we go through life, we don't see necessarily the way things God has planned in our lives. And with Donald Trump losing to Joe Biden 4 years ago, and then all of a sudden he won and he's going back to the White House, I think that might be a blessing in disguise, in as much as now he knows exactly what to do. He's done this before. He is able to take time and create a vision. He's had friends, obviously, with the Project 2025 folks over there at the Heritage Foundation. he's just has a lot of experience, a lot of people on his side that's trying to get behind him and help him right out of the shot, so to speak, make an impression, make America great again. I think that's probably the best way to say it. So, Zach, you like my background? Thank you. I'll have to make one with Santa before our next meeting. I think that's a great idea, Zach. Thank you for that suggestion. So, we were talking for the last couple of nights. We've been talking about the fact how President Joe Biden is literally giving away, well, maybe not literally, it's pretty close to it, $5 a sheet for the sheet metal that they have at the border to defend our border and to, frankly, secure our borders. Well, the United States taxpayers under President Donald Trump paid approximately $200 to $300 million for the wall panels that they had constructed under Donald Trump's watch. Not all of it, of course, was built. Time run out on Donald Trump's first term. So you have President Biden literally auctioning this stuff off at $5 a sheet. And Donald Trump had something to say about that today. So let's see.
But now
we'll talk about it here.
We ordered an additional 200 miles of wall. It's very expensive. And now it's about double the price of what it would have been 6 years ago. And the administration is trying to sell it for 5 cents on the dollar, knowing that we're getting ready to put it up. And what they're doing is really an act. It's almost a criminal act. They know we're going to use it. And if we don't have it, we're going to have to rebuild it. And it'll cost double what it cost years ago. And that's hundreds of millions of dollars, because you're talking about.
I can add one thing to what President Trump said today, and that is it's not almost a criminal act. I would say it is a criminal act. I would say it borders on treason. I think we can make that argument, but it's clearly criminal. American taxpayers paid a lot of money for that material, and now it's going to have to be rebought at double the price. Donald Trump is not going to stop because Joe Biden is giving away the materials for the border wall. We all know that. So get ready to pay another probably $600 million. I don't know. He said 2 or 3 times what it was back then. You could probably just go ahead and level it off at a cool $1 trillion to purchase those panels that the American taxpayers already paid for once. But thanks to the incompetent President Biden, that's where we're at right now. I'm sure y'all are probably just as angry and outraged about it as I am. Unbelievable, and so blatant. But of course, President Biden does not care about image per se. So let's take a quick look at a couple more of these. I guess you can call them posts. Most of these I got from the Trump War Room. I love that.
They're going to take it back.
Let's listen to that for a second.
In terms of your mass deportation plans, have you had any preliminary discussions with countries like Venezuela, from where the Tren de Aragua gang is now popping up?
They'll take them back.
They're going to take them back.
They're all taking them back. Yep. And if they don't, they'll be met very harshly economically.
That's another fantastic response by President Trump. A reporter was asking him, in terms of your mass deportation plans, have you had any preliminary discussions with Venezuela, talking about taking back their migrants? And I think he clearly operates out of his own book, The Art of the Deal, and that's exactly what President Donald Trump is doing. Set expectations, tell your adversary, tell your opponent exactly what's going to happen and what they can look forward to, and let them know there's consequences if your expectations are not met. Trump 101. I love it. And of course, Julianne was saying Biden has done whatever it takes to break the American spirit to hardworking people. I agree. Very well said. And amen to that. Unfortunately, but that is exactly what's going on. Better news today, though, is the fact that on Capitol Hill today was none other than RFK
Jr. You can see a live look right there. RFK Jr. has just walked in, and he is walking through the mags right now and getting a security sweeping before he heads inside the Hart Senate office building to meet with Senator.
What do you think about him? You think he's going to make a great head of the department that he is going to be heading? Hey, what is it? It's going to be the HHS is what he's going to be the head of. I think it's fantastic. He's got a lot of great ideas. If I'm being perfectly honest with you, I'm a little concerned on some of his stances pertaining to vaccines and whatnot. But as long as he doesn't get too crazy or nutty, I think it's a great idea to shake everything up. And listen, it is true, things like autism Asperger's syndrome, just all kinds of issues that are on what we call the PDD spectrum, the pervasive development spectrum. Clearly, it has more than tripled, quadrupled, whatever since the 1990s. There's something wrong. I don't know if it has to do with that we pretty well label everybody nowadays, or we are more diligent in trying to label everybody. And the reason we do that is we want to get the resources, frankly, the money to whatever children might need additional help, might need additional resources. And in that regard, I don't have any problem with what they're doing as far as labeling the kids. But we need to identify whatever it is and take appropriate action on it. Additionally, I think he can make a real difference in areas of, frankly, helping the country become healthier. I don't want him to take away choice. If you want to be fat and lazy and eat sugar all day, I think that's your prerogative. That's what you want to do. However, when it comes to children in the school programs, or it just comes to disclosing what is on a box, or I should say what's in a box, to make sure that we all have better information, and if perhaps there are chemicals or certain things that are questionable or maybe just outright bad for us, hey, boot it out. Let them put some type of replacement or something in there. I don't have any issue with that. And Zach, I think he will face too many out. You know, you may be right. I'm curious what y'all think about him, if you like him overall or not. I think at this point he's going to get confirmed. I think most of Donald Trump's cabinet is going to get through, if not all of them. By the way, we haven't had time to look at it, but there is I saw an article, I think it was in Politico the other day, and you had the Alaska senator. She was not too happy about the obvious, but at least she understands what's going on, and that is Donald Trump and the team are not messing around this time, ladies and gentlemen. If indeed you have someone that's a Republican, they're on the team, they were elected by their voters to bring about Donald Trump's agenda, to work together, to make America great again. And they want to stonewall, and they want to not allow his cabinet picks to go through. Hey, it's perfectly within their rights to go ahead. Elon Musk has the money. Some other individuals have the money and are willing to put the bill for this. But we need to do what we did to Liz Cheney, and that is go ahead and primary these individuals. Elon Musk said he'd be right there with a checkbook, not a problem at all. And I think it was Lisa Murkowski or something to that effect out of Alaska. She was crying about it on TV. Too bad, so sad. That's exactly what they should do. I believe her term is up in 2 years, so we'll see how that works out. But they are definitely not too happy about it. But listen, change is here. Donald Trump won the election. It was an overwhelming election as far as electoral college is concerned, and he won at least with 2.5 million votes in excess. And I think that he has a mandate to bring about the change that we all so desperately wanted. Also in the news today has been the fact, well, it's been the last day or two. We remember the George Stephanopoulos nonsense with ABC News. And folks, trust me, these people in the legacy media, they are going to pay the piper very soon, especially with the new chairman that Donald Trump is putting in there, the new FCC chairman. They're going to start revoking licenses for these places that will not do what they're supposed to do under current law. We're not even talking making new law. And that is, they're supposed to be fair. They're supposed to give equal time, because even though they are individual companies, we all know by now that they are supposed to be given equal time to equal candidate. That has not been the case, especially with Donald Trump. I can honestly say in my lifetime, I don't think I remember a candidate that has been blasted almost by everybody in every single way possible. The news has always been one-sided on some level, at least. And I understand that generally people that are more liberal are attracted to these journalist type jobs. I get that. And I understand that the same thing is true, generally speaking, with teachers. Overwhelmingly, a lot of them are liberal, but it's just the fact that in my lifetime, it's been so blatant to see exactly what has happened to President Trump. He cannot get good press coverage, at least until he won the election, no matter what. I mean, every story, they spun it in a negative light. If Donald Trump, for example, was to donate $1 billion to charity, I'm sure they would run a story as to why he did not donate $2 billion to charity, and that he's a cheapskate or something like that. It's stunning And I hope that they're held to task. But we're going to look at this clip here in just a second. What is really awesome about this is out of the ABC settlement, they agreed to pay, what was it, $15 million to Donald Trump's future presidential library. And now he is going to go ahead and sue. Y'all remember that pollster in Iowa right before the election? They came out and say it's a stunning development. I think it was Kamala Harris was up, 10, 12 points, just something outrageous. Donald Trump was like, no, that's not happening. And you had every single legacy media head on TV talking about how Donald Trump's in denial and that this woman, I think her name was Stelzer, she was like the gold standard, that her credentials were impeccable. Her work was A+ type work. And of course, she was just flat wrong. And Donald Trump, as expected, won, 10, 12 points. I think they'll cover it right here. But let's take a quick peek at this. I think this is interesting in the sense that Donald Trump's not taking it no more. He is going to sue, and I think he should. By the way, if you're thinking, well, how can he sue someone in the press? Well, it's real simple. It's spreading lies, disinformation, as far as slander or libel. And not only that, you have issues, at least potentially, this is what I'm going to guess he's going to put into the lawsuit, that it was intentional. It was intentional on this pollster's part to put this type of negative press out there, and somehow, some way, convince the rest of the country, yeah, Donald Trump's a loser and you need to vote for Kamala Harris.
So I'm going to be bringing one against
with it, but we'll see.
I'm going to be bringing one against the people in Iowa, their newspaper, which had a very, very good pollster who got me right all the time.
That's her picture right there, by the way.
And then just before the election, she said I was going to lose by 3 or 4 points, and it became the biggest story all over the world because I was going to win Iowa by 20 points. The farmers loved me, and I loved the farmers. And it was interesting the way she did it. She brought it down 2 weeks before. She said I was going to only win by 4.
It's just more lies, trying to write the dialogue, write the script that they want to write. I think that's pretty obvious. Zach, you're right. High fructose corn syrup needs to be banned. I think they're going to look at that. I'm not sure what they're going to replace that with. Probably just old-fashioned sugar. I don't know. But that is something they're looking at. And Julianne, biblically blasted almost, and he does not quit for us. Amen. Amen. Excellent. And I agree 100%. Okay. That's pretty it as far as the issues that I wanted to go over on this particular scroll. Let's go ahead and dive into our story today. Y'all are going to be shocked by this. So let me start up by saying this is a Florida woman. It happened in a county just south of where I live. This is the place is Lakeland, Sarasota area, but specifically Lakeland. This is a case that apparently the FBI contacted the sheriff there. And you have to remember, this is in wake of this New York shooters case pertaining to, what's that guy's name? Luigi Maggiano. I think I'm finally getting enough practice saying his name. But let's go and take a look at this case. I got a lot of issues and just comments in general that I want to discuss on this. So let's go ahead and take a peek at this. We're going to share the screen. I got like 2 news clips on this, and then we're going to drill down into it. So let's listen together.
I do want to get to another big story that we have been covering. Again, we've been talking a lot about the murder of the United Healthcare CEO, a Florida woman.
And that's her, obviously, in the middle of your screen. I think her name is Brittany, what is her name? Well, they're going to disclose it here and we'll talk about it.
And has now been charged with threatening her health insurance provider during a phone conversation after police say she uttered the same words that were found on the bullet casings used in the killing of an insurance executive in New York. Briana Boston, 42 years old, told a representative of Blue Cross Blue Shield, quote, delay, deny, depose, you people.
Her name is Briana. Briana Boston, 42 years old, no criminal record, just a mom. I think she's got 2 or 3 kids. Obviously, she's sick, some kind of issues going on with her, and she was on the phone arguing with Blue Cross Blue Shield, and they denied her claim. So she is quoted as saying, delay, deny, depose, you people are next. I'm going to let this play out, but just understand, she's charged with a very serious crime. and I'm not making this up, it sounds like a joke. She is literally facing 15 years incarcerated under this particular Florida statute. In addition to that, the judge gave her a $100,000 bail, bond, I should say, to get out of jail. And of course, she doesn't have that kind of money. She's just a normal mom with a couple kids or whatnot. And she's, like I said, she's obviously got health issues. They're keeping her in jail. And the judge is going to make some comments that are shocking. And I'm going to tell you why they're shocking after we listen to these comments together, and just aggravating and shocking to the nth degree.
Are next, as they ended a phone call Tuesday in which she unsuccessfully challenged the company's denial of her insurance claim. Those allegations coming from police in Lakeland, Florida. The words delay, deny, and oppose were written on the casings left at the scene of the shooting of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson on a New York City street back on December 4th. The words reflect the delay, deny, defend strategy that some insurance companies use in dealing with expensive claims, delay the decision, deny the claim, and aggressively defend themselves. Our Fox 13 Tampa team has more.
A 42-year-old married mother of 3 from Lakeland was in court charged with threats to conduct an act of terrorism and a mass shooting for a phone call with a healthcare agent.
Charges written threat to kill or injure, conduct a mass shooting or an act of terrorism. That's a second-degree felony, punished by 15 years in Florida State Prison.
She's accused of threatening the Blue Cross Blue Shield employee using the now infamous language associated with the accused United Healthcare CEO killer. Briana Boston admitted to saying, "Delay, deny, depose. You people are next." We spoke with a lawyer about the case.
I think it's an overcharge. In reality, there's nothing in her communication that specifically says she's going to commit a mass shooting. I think it's more falls on that free speech line, on that protected speech. Although stupid, although ignorant, something you shouldn't say. The law allows you to say stupid, ignorant things, and even violent things, as long as it's not what's called a true threat.
He said a true threat would be to a particular person or a more actionable statement. He likened her angry language to what thousands are posting on social media this week.
If you post something stupid on Twitter and it's read by somebody who may work for some company and they're taking it as a threat, then are we going to go and arrest every person on Twitter because they say stupid things? In this case, really, it is that. It's somebody who talked to an individual who she doesn't know, has never met, has never probably even spoken to, and said words that a lot of people are uttering on social media.
Still, the judge in her first court appearance setting bond at $100,000, referencing the tensions in the U.S. around healthcare right now.
I do find that the bond of $100,000 is appropriate considering the status of our country.
This comment you just heard from the judge, we're going to talk at length about. This is all the more reason why this charge is inappropriate. You heard the judge just say, given the situation in our country right now, that's very key, very important.
I think that works better for her in reality, because it goes back to her saying this is political hyperbole. This is me expressing my frustration.
And that was our Fox 13.
Well, we'll see how this plays out. I got one more clip, and then we're going to take a deep dive on this because I want us to understand why she was charged. I want to explain what you can and can't say so you don't find yourself in this type of situation. And, you know, at the end of the day, the reality is there's nothing that stops any of us from being arrested. I mean, if a police officer decides you've committed a crime, it's at their discretion to place you under arrest. Doesn't mean you're going to be convicted, but it does mean you're in for a bad time. It does mean you're going to be incarcerated. It does mean you're going to be spending money on an attorney, probably missing work. I mean, it can really mess up your life in so many ways. So I specifically want to talk about what is going on, why is it going on, and what you should do if you were in this situation. All the different type of things I like to talk about. This case represents what we talk about a lot on this channel. So let me click over this one more video here, and then we're going to drill down on this. This was, by the way, the other one was a local station. I believe it was in Orlando, and then this one here is WFLA right here in the greater Tampa area. And let's Listen to this real quick. It's a short clip and we'll
Thank you
drill
for
into
joining
it.
us tonight. Legal experts tell News Channel 8 this case against a Lakeland woman accused of making a threat against her insurance company is going to be hard to prove.
It's a case that has garnered a lot of local and even national attention. Polk County Bureau reporter Stacey DeSilva is live in Lakeland with some of that reaction for us tonight. Stacey.
Jen and Keith, Lakeland police arrested 42-year-old Briana Boston this week after being contacted by the FBI about a threat. Today, we spoke to another attorney who is not representing Boston about this case, and he says he thinks it could be dropped.
The government's going to have a difficult time in this case.
Rusty Franklin is a criminal defense attorney in Polk County.
If this had happened 10 days ago, never would have been arrested.
That's a good point, too.
Lakeland police say during a recorded phone call with her insurance company, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Briana Boston made reference to the December 4th murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson in Manhattan. According to her affidavit, Boston used the same words allegedly written on the shell casings: delay, deny, depose, and then added, "You people are next."
Speech of this nature, where you're having to look at an outside event to try to glean what her intent might have been. Intent's one of the most difficult things to prove in the criminal justice system.
Boston appeared emotional in court, learning the legal trouble she was facing.
I do find that the bond of $100,000 is appropriate considering the status of our country at this point.
She's facing
The status of our country should not even come into play. It should have nothing to do with whether or not this is a crime.
a charge of written threat to kill or injure, conduct a mass shooting, or an act of terrorism.
The last word is very troubling. The statute said the statute does not include making these prohibited statements by a telephone call.
He's not exactly correct on that. I did research into that. The statute does say making a threat as far as a written threat, but a lot of times you can simply have a prosecutor. You have to look into what's called case law. And I looked into some of that. And here's the deal. You could have the FBI took the phone call, for example, and transcribed it. They could consider the written transcription as being a written threat. It's kind of a nuance. It's getting really picky and in the weeds, but that might not be a silver bullet. One other thing I want to say, just because you have two attorneys who are saying, oh, there's going to be dropped, this is not going to go anywhere, that does not mean it's not going to go anywhere. And I've seen too many cases like this where people, it's just not going to go anywhere, but it can, and it does. Look at Daniel Penny in New York. Look at what's going on with this woman. This woman's in jail right now. She's still in jail. This is from a few days ago. She's in jail right now today, sitting in jail for another night tonight. So for her, it doesn't seem like it's going away.
Now, the case is still under investigation by the Lakeland Police Department at last check. Boston.
Yeah, Lakeland is the municipality I was just telling you about that it's in. It's in the county is called Polk County. Now, let me switch over to the actual police report because I got a few things I want to take a peek at there. I went ahead and pulled the police report so we can talk about it. All right, here we go. All right, let's share this screen. Then I'm going to share the law with you, and we're gonna keep dissecting this here. All right, so this is the actual. If I get it to pull up, 1 second. This is the actual. Here we go. Okay, this is the police report. Let's take a peek at this together. All right. Now, a couple points to tell you on this particular law, and the law is cited in here. So we'll just read it together. City limits of Lakeland, county of Polk, and you have the person, the officer that kind of, it's like swearing out a complaint. And that's basically what this is. This is Briana Boston police report. And there is some redactions in here, obviously, for privacy reasons here. So, all right. Let's get to the meat of it. It's all wrote out right here. It says, your affiant, the person that is making this complaint, the police officer, is currently a task force officer. Some of these task forces also are problematic. They had that one in Memphis that ended up killing that one individual. As a result of it, they ended up with the police officer there facing criminal charges, and they disbanded that particular task force. Some of these task force, by my observation, from cases that I have covered, that I have seen, it seems like that's where they have the problems, is in a lot of these task force. I just think they get overzealous in whatever their mission is. But it says it's currently a task force officer with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, and has been since November 2023. Currently, I'm a detective with the Lakeland Police Department, LPD, in Lakeland, Polk County, Florida. I have been employed by the LPD since May 2020. I am presently assigned to the FBI Tampa Bay Safety Street Task Force. On December 10th, 2024, so what are we looking, 6 days ago, the FBI contacted your affiant regarding a possible threat to life in the city of Lakeland. The FBI provided your affiant a summary of the recorded phone call that took place earlier today. Your affiant was advised that Briana Boston, born 1982, contacted Blue Cross Blue Shield Insurance Company pertaining to a recent medical insurance claims of which she was denied. Near the end of the phone call, Boston stated in sum and substance, quote, delay, deny, depose, you people are next, end quote. This phrase references an exact phrase used during a recent current events regarding the United Healthcare Insurance Company CEO who was shot and killed in Manhattan, New York. Shell casings were recovered at the scene, had the words delay, deny, depose handwritten onto these shell casings. This information was released to the media and became a nationally recognized phrase directed against insurance companies. Okay, it goes on. The following review of the information, your affiant made contact with Boston and her residence regarding this. So this particular detective with the Lakeland Police Department went to Miss Boston's home and talked to her. Now, I want to be really clear. If you're ever contacted by the police, especially in a circumstance like this, you need not to talk to the police. I can't make that any more clear. Please do not talk to the police. If it's me, I'm going to be very polite and I'm going to ask, what's going on? How can I help you? I mean, it's going to be very limited, anything I do say, but I'm not going to be answering questions. I would say something like, with all due respect, I just don't talk to the police. I have an attorney, and I would be happy to put you in touch with my attorney if you would like to give me a card. Generally, most police officers, most detectives are not going to do the right thing and hand you a card and say, sure, have them give me a call. They're going to continue. And the reason they continue is people, when they have the police show up at their door, trust me on this, they are scared. They are scared to death. And this is one of the reasons, in my opinion, people do so much time in prison for a particular offense, because they basically end up admitting guilt, or they admit something that comes back and haunts them later. There are just so many examples that I can go into of a situation where someone said something and as a result they're incarcerated, or they're incarcerated for a period longer than they should have been incarcerated. There is no good, with very limited exception, that can come from talking to the police. It's just full of risk and problems, and you don't talk to the police. I really can't make that any more clear than to say it the way I say it. Now, a lot of times also a police officer will say something like, oh, well, what's your attorney's name? Again, it's an old trick. What's the trick? You answer a question with a question. So don't fall for that trick. You simply say, if you like, give me your card, I'll have my attorney contact you. I don't care if you have an attorney or not, you can get an attorney. The key in this situation is to shut the conversation down. Do not talk. You want to get out of that conversation as quickly as possible without making any statements. So again, my experience has been the only way you're going to be able to end that conversation is you're going to have to get rude, because the police officer or the detective is depending and counting on the fact you're going to be like most people, and that is you're too afraid of being rude. You're afraid of being rude. You're afraid you're going to make the officer mad and they're going to arrest you as a result of that. Most of us do not deal with with police officers on a day-to-day basis. And as a result, it's just part of the human condition that when we're in front of a law enforcement officer, and of course, it's much worse if it's going to be like an FBI agent that's talking with you, you have to, in your mind, if something like this ever happened, to get yourself in a situation where you tell yourself, calm down, relax, slow your heartbeat down, and very firmly, politely but directly, I'm not answering questions. If you'd like to give me a card, I'll have my attorney. That's it. Shut it down. As I said, the law enforcement officer, the overwhelming majority of the times, I have not seen no exception to this. And all the cases I have reviewed, you're going to have to excuse yourself. You're going to have to shut the door. You're under no obligation to answer your door. You do not have to answer the door if the police officer comes by your house. If they have a warrant, then they can break the door and come in. I mean, really, it's just that simple. You never consent to searches. You never talk to the police. Like I said, it's just not going to end well for anyone that's involved in that. Let me check, make sure I'm caught up on the comments as I start going through this here. Let's see. All right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That shooter is 100,000 donated. I did not know that, but I'm not surprised. I do know, as we talked about yesterday, he does have that high-powered, if you will, quote unquote, high-powered divorce attorney. Very smart move on the part of his family to obtain him a lawyer like that, especially a lawyer that is the right tool for the job. And that is a lady that is a former prosecutor in that office, someone that has worked with that office very, very closely and for a very long time. That's exactly the tool that he needs in this situation. And as we talked about yesterday, I think she actually has a good chance, not necessarily of getting him found not guilty, but definitely getting something less than, for example, life in prison or a very, very long prison sentence. This kid's charged with, I believe it's like a murder too. As we talked about in New York, it's not a murder one, like a capital murder case, because it does not have some of the conditions that are required under New York laws. Zach says this seems more like a general deterrence tactic in the legitimate criminal case. You know, that's a great point, Zach, because have you noticed you have these weird cases, for example, in places like New York City, you got a place way over on the left, and then you have someone like Alvin Bragg bringing these weird cases that would not be brought any other way. Well, again, in my experience, I've seen kind of the opposite things in conservative areas. In Lakeland, Polk County here in Florida, Florida is very conservative in general, and Polk County is very conservative. And what happens is I can only refer to these cases as the morality police. I saw a young woman one time get in trouble with the police for cussing. I'm not making this up. I've seen this happen, but it was in a very conservative area. And I think that's kind of what's going on right here with this particular case. I mean, listen, my argument would be delay, deny, depose. To me, that sounds like a reference to the book by a similar title, not an exact copy. You people are next. I would think, hey, that means we're going to be sued. I'm not going to tolerate this type of fraud on behalf of Blue Cross Blue Shield. I mean, this is what I'm thinking she might be thinking, and I'm going to take every legal remedy I can to, I'm not going to allow this to happen. We're going to read her response, which for the response she gave is not that bad. In fact, I think this could actually serve her well. I'm glad she said what she said. I wish she wouldn't have talked, period. When an officer comes out to talk with you, they are there to determine one thing: was a crime committed? It's really that simple, ladies and gentlemen. You're not going to talk them out of anything. If they have the proof that a crime was committed, you're going to be arrested. End of story. You're going to be arrested. You're not going to sweet talk your way out of it. It just is not going to happen. Therefore, there's no reason to talk to the police. That's kind of where I'm trying to go with that. But Zach, you're exactly right. I think with all the threats that are going online and the fact that everybody's talking about this New York shorter case, you even had President Trump talking about it today. You had posters in New York with other CEOs kind of being targeted. You have a lot of places that are on a very short fuse, and they want to basically make an example out of her. So I think that's exactly what's going on, kind of what you're hinting about there, Zach. And FJB, thank you for being here, my friend. Something doesn't seem right. Doesn't seem right, and it is not right. She had a Trump sign on her lawn, probably. I wouldn't. Of course, this is Florida. You know, like I said, it's generally a very pro-Trump area. Every area is not like that, but here in Florida, it definitely is a very conservative. But as I said earlier, Julian, I've seen these places. Obviously, if they're left, you have a Daniel Penning type situation, and on the right, you almost have like the morality police. I've seen it go both ways, and in my mind, when I first saw this case, that's what I was thinking of. In this country, we have free speech. We're supposed to have free speech, and I talk a lot about how our free speech rights are under assault, and that is not that's not hyperbole on my point. That's the truth. We know in Britain and Ireland, there's what, like 1,400 people currently in jail for something they posted on Facebook or on one of the other social media platforms that upset somebody else. And it wasn't nothing violent. I mean, it just, the way the rules are there, that if you say something that upsets someone else, you can be held culpable. Remember that video of the prayer that was going on in Britain? The woman was praying. The police walked up to her, it's recorded, and said, "Ma'am, may we inquire as to what the nature of your prayer is?" I'm not making this up. That's what they said. And I'm telling you, that's coming here to America if we don't stop it. And this case, in my opinion, has the markings of that type of nonsense that's going on. This woman did not threaten this, in my opinion, she did not threaten this Blue Cross Blue Shield worker. She obviously expressed that she's upset, that she's mad, and she's venting off steam. And we're going to get into it here in a minute, but generally, when it comes to criminal activities, you have to do something more than words. Now, that's not always the case, but generally, that's the case. For example, even President Donald Trump, you had him not long ago saying, now he was definitely taken out of context, but he was talking about Liz Cheney. And he made the comment that if guns were pointed to her, I mean, it's kind of the same thing that we're talking about here. And generally, it's like even Donald Trump again on January 6th. There's a reason he was not charged with inciting a riot, because it's free speech. The Supreme Court, in I think it was 1966, was very clear. You cannot charge someone and convict them with inciting a riot unless there's another act, what they call in furtherance of his words, of his statements. And that was just simply not the case in this particular thing. Zach says, let's see, isn't this also about perceived threat? Yeah, it actually, that is actually a factor in it. But we're going to get into the law here in just a second, and then you can make up your own mind about that. But that's a great point. So let's finish the second part of this affidavit, probable cause, and then we're going to get right back into it on the other side. It says, your affiant asked Boston if she used the phrase delay, deny, depose. You people are next. During her call earlier today with Blue Cross Blue Shield, to which she acknowledged she said it and apologized. See, this is the mistakes here. You don't talk to the police, right? It is good, though, that she apologized. I think that helps her case on some level. And again, we'll get into that in just a minute. It goes on. Boston stated she used these words because it's what's in the news right now. Boston advised she learned of the phrase because of the current events regarding the United Healthcare homicide. Boston stated she did not own any firearms and she was not a danger to anyone. Boston further stated the healthcare companies played games and deserved karma. That's what she said. Okay, deserved karma from the world because they are evil. It goes on, based on the aforementioned statements made by Boston and based off of current events. I believe these statements were meant to threaten the insurance company by using the United Healthcare CEO's homicide to her advantage. Your affiant believes there is sufficient probable cause to charge Boston, and this is the charge here, with threats to conduct a mass shooting or an act of terrorism, based on the recorded phone call with Blue Cross Blue Shield. So dissect that a second. To conduct a mass shooting. Now, that's interesting because he's basing it on the New York situation. That was not a mass shooting. That was an assassination of one individual. They got a problem, Houston. And then finally, an act of terrorism. An act of terrorism is very specific in the law. There's no way to stretch this as an act of terrorism? Was this a threat to, on some level, I don't want to say harass, but was it meant to aggravate, or I mean, we can call it a threat. Was it a threat to Blue Cross Blue Shield? Yeah, it probably was a threat, but not all threats are illegal. As I said earlier, you can make a civil threat, for example, and that's perfectly legal. It happens all the time. If you don't give me back the lawnmower that you bought for me, I'm going to sue you. I mean, there's a million different variations of exactly that, right? All right, so that's the end of that particular affidavit. Now, let's go ahead and dissect this in the law. I'm curious, what do y'all think about that? If this is all there is in this case, do you see any type of crime? And again, the police threats to conduct a mass shooting. What are they talking about? Or an act of terrorism. And remember, this woman is currently sitting in jail right now. Right now, she's sitting in jail. It's just, I just don't see anything resembling justice in this particular matter. Now, let's go ahead. I want to take a look again. And of course, I used AI again to help out. It's good with the thought process and referencing the laws. And I think this is worth taking a peek at. So let's go ahead. Let me share my screen here with you. And okay, here we go. Now, again, this is ChatGPT, and this is based on some questions and some massaging I did on this. But let's take a quick overview on this, and we'll take a look at it here. Let's see. But she said, you people are next, which may imply a mass shooting. Well, I guess if you word it that way, Zach, I could see that. But remember, as we're going to go over here, they have to prove in a court of law that there's a direct correlation right here. The mass shooting, I think that's an interesting way to put it. I don't see it like that, but maybe that's what they're going to try to go with. I think that is I think that's an interesting way to look at it. The View gets to apologize. I don't think they're going to be apologizing too much, but we'll see. That's a good point. Let's see, isn't the ability to carry out the threats, but we're going to talk about that right now. Good point, Zach. Exactly. You generally have to have the ability to carry it out. Listen, the Supreme Court is very protective. They have in history been very protective of our free speech rights. We all know, for example, in a crowded movie theater, you can't go in there and scream fire real loud and scare everybody and cause everybody to panic and cause a stampede where someone can get injured or even die as a result of that. So even in that case that decided you could not do that, the Supreme Court, I mean, listen, they had like a fit. They were kicking and screaming. They did not want to rule in favor of saying that you cannot say the word fire. They just didn't want to say that. So it's something that is generally a high bar, a high level, and it's just like Zach said. Do they have the ability to carry out the threat? Let's dive into it, and that's what we're going to do right now. So here's the deal. At what point in the United States is saying something is free speech versus something that's criminal, that it can be considered a threat? In the United States, free speech is protected under the First Amendment of the Constitution, but there are limits. The distinction between protected speech and criminal speech typically hinges on the context and the intent behind the words. Here are some key points where free speech may come across the line of free expression to criminal activity. Now, you heard that one speaker a little while ago talk about true threats. Okay, this is what we're going to talk about. Speech that incites violence or poses a real threat to others' safety can be considered a criminal act. The courts have ruled that a true threat, that's the buzz phrase, are not protected by the First Amendment. A true threat is a statement that a reasonable person would interpret as a serious expression of intent to harm or kill someone. So that's kind of a loosey-goosey legal definition, but they would have to prove it was a serious expression of intent to harm or kill someone. When she was interviewed by the police officer, she was very clear. She had no intention to harm or threaten. She even apologized, right? We're on the same page with this. This includes threats directed at individuals, groups, or public officials. Example, saying I'm going to harm you with an implied intent to cause harm would be considered a criminal threat. And they cite a Supreme Court case here back from 2003. There's another category called incitement to intimidate lawless action. That's what we were kind of talking about with President Trump on January 6th. And this is the case from the 60s, 1969, Brandenburg versus Ohio decision established that speech can be limited if it incites imminent lawless action. This means that if speech is likely to incite immediate illegal actions like violence, it may be restricted. Example, if someone incites a mob to riot or cause for an immediate act of violence, this could be classified as incitement and is not protected. But remember, we're going to talk about this a little more detail at the next question here. There generally has to be something other than the words. That's exactly what Zach was talking about just a second ago. He was talking about the ability to carry out. Yes. And again, it's like anything else. It's like anything else, my friends. When you get down to it, there's not always these bright lines in the law between right and wrong. You have to look at the law. You have to look at the way the words are positioned and what they're saying. And most importantly, you have to go to the case law. Effectively, that's the interpretation of the words. I would argue that the interpretation of the words, or of the law, if you will, is more important than the actual law. And that ultimately is what is decided by the Supreme Courts of the state, or ultimately by the United States Supreme Court. So that is exactly what we're dissecting into right here. So FJB, love the word. Oh, thank you, FJB. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you too, buddy. So Zach says, if she had no intent, no mens rea. You've been studying up on the law here. I like that, Zach. Good deal. Case closed. I learned how to delete there. It's fantastic. It depends. We're going to have to look at the context of the law, and it would definitely be a factor. But I got a summary on this coming up, so I think this might paint it a little more clear. Before I move on, though, remember the first thing was the true threats. Second is incitement, and then there's something called fighting words. Have y'all heard of that before? I've actually experienced this myself. It's a little bit of a long story, but fighting words is basically like where you're trying to antagonize somebody. It says speech that is likely to provoke intimate violence is sometimes called fighting words. These are words that by their very utterance incite I'm going to say, I'm getting tongue tied. By their very utterance, incite intimate, violent response. The Supreme Court ruled in a 1942 case, it's Chaspi versus New Hampshire, that fighting words are not protected by the First Amendment. It gives an example. Directly insulting someone in a way that is likely to provoke an immediate violent response could be considered criminal. Now, the best example I can give you of fighting words is, let's say someone comes up to you and say, hey, how would you like to step outside? Clearly, they're inviting you to a fight. Them are fighting words. I think more accurately when I see fighting words, maybe when I'm watching like one of those cop movies and you see someone coming up to a police officer aggressively, or they're saying things that are trying to trigger a fight. Those could very well be considered fighting words. Okay. It gets kind of complicated, and I'm not even going to really get into hate speech, obscenity, or defamation. Hate speech, we've talked about this on this program. It's another area that concerns me. I understand what it is, but it doesn't make much sense to me that there's one penalty if it's a crime, and then there's another penalty if it's a hate crime. So in other words, we have a love crime and we have a hate crime. It's just nonsense to me. But in practical terms, what they're getting at there is that if you're doing something to someone because they are a certain race, or because they are a certain sexual persuasion or whatnot, then they enhance the penalties. I, for one, generally, I don't like the hate speech laws. I think it's a way to, I think it just it just creates more of this racist nonsense we got going on in our country right now. Again, it's just my opinion. People have the perfect right to disagree with me. I just don't like it. Same thing. Well, not exact same thing, but when it comes to obscenity, they're talking. We know what we're talking about when we talk about obscenities, and it's a very complicated area of the law. Some of it's protected. There's something called community standards. Again, that's a very, very deep area of the law. But we are generally dealing with magazines and stuff like that. I think you know what I'm talking about. It's not something that's applicable in what we're talking about. And then, of course, defamation. We're talking about libel, slander, and there's different things for national security, this type of stuff. Okay, so let's move on. I asked Chat GPT what Zach was asking me a minute ago. It said something to the effect of, isn't there something you have to, that you have to prove in furtherance? So let me read the question when we went. It said, it's my understanding, this is me, right? It's my understanding that under true threats or even imminent lawless action and fighting words, that it's not just the words. You have to do something in furtherance of your speech that is criminal, just like we've been talking about. And it says, yeah, you are correct in understanding the criminality of certain speech, such as true threats, incitement, and fighting words, often involves more than just the words themselves. The law looks at both and content of the speech and the context. See, it gets very deep and very complicated when it comes down to these specific laws, including whether any actions were taken in furtherance of the speech. That's exactly what Zach's talking about. That's what I've been talking about. On January 6th, again, President Donald Trump's speech, they never charged him with inciting a riot because he did not incite a riot under that 1969 Supreme Court case. We can get into the issue that he said to peacefully and patriotically. If you just isolate a few statements he said in that speech, there's nothing in there that under the legal definition of the law is truly incitement. If that was the case, probably every politician would be charged with a crime and incarcerated. And again, going back to this poor lady here, this is what's happening to her. The law is not being applied fairly to her. So true threats are not protected by the First Amendment, but it is important to note that the mere words alone may not always be sufficient to meet the threshold for a criminal threat. The context matters, and actions taken in furtherance of those threats can elevate the situation, and that puts you in the criminal area of the rule. So again, did someone go, let's say you're trying to incite a riot, okay, where you said words that they allege are criminal. Well, what else is there? Did you give somebody money to go buy guns for the riot? Did you give somebody money to go buy other supplies that might be needed? Did you go yourself and purchase those items? That's the kind of thing that they're looking at when it comes to that this type of situation. And Julianne, you're exactly right. The Ray Epps. This is what we're. This is all about to come out when Donald Trump gets back into office. Right here, I've been reading up on Ray Epps even today. The other day the FBI came out and said something to the effect of they didn't have any employees there, but they had operatives or people. Let's just put it this way: it's individuals in their privity, is the way I would say it. They've been lying all along, as we know they've been lying all along, and I guess you can call it Judgment Day. Reckoning Day is coming for these individuals, and they know it. And yes, I agree. Ray Epps was engaging in these fighting words, and I would probably argue it's even incitement, some of the things he was saying. I think that's kind of where they're going to go with this, somewhere between fighting, somewhere between inciting the crowd. And they're trying to say, of course, the FBI had nothing to do with that. Zach said, a introduction to criminal law. Yes. And yes, it is a double standard, Julianne. Excellent points, folks. All right. Again, incitement to intimidate lawless action. And again, it goes back to that case from 1969. And it says there must be a clear and present danger of lawless action. The law also considers whether any actions were taken to carry out the speech's incitement, something in furtherance of the particular thing that was incited. That's exactly what it goes down to. I'll tell you all a quick story about fighting words right here in Tampa. Well, it's been a long time ago, but I had this situation where I guess reasonable people could differ. I might have cut in line at a doctor's office one time, and it was more like where you go donate blood for a what do you call it, for just regular testing. You know how they do that on well checkups, and it was first thing in the morning. Everybody's rushing in there, and I didn't know there was a line, but again, I don't want to get off on the details. So let's just say, for example, I cut in the line. I might have, maybe I did, maybe I didn't. I don't know. But at any rate, there was this one older guy, and when I say older guy, he probably about the same age I was, but he was belligerent. You know how people get really bent out of shape when you cut in line, especially here in Tampa. There's a lot of old people here, and I'm telling you, they'll shank you if they think you cut in line. You better make darn sure you don't cut in line here in Florida. These people are crazy. At any rate, I had this one, but just gentleman is kind of not a fitting word for this guy. But anyway, he told me, he said, he was insistent I move out of line. And of course, when someone talks to me like that, you know how it is. I'm not moving out of line, right? And he said something to the effect of, would you like to step outside? And of course, we all know what that means. And we all know that is what I just said, a fighting word. Well, I ended up telling the guy, I said, listen, and the room was crowded with people, by the way. And I said, listen, I realize you're having an emotional reaction and that you're pretty well lit, but I'm going to give you a chance to think about what you just said to me. I said, what you just said under the law here in Florida is considered a fighting word. Now, I want you to understand what that means. If I go outside with you and let's just say for some reason you end up killing me or you injure me, I want you to know that under the law, you will not be able to claim a stand your ground defense. You will not be able to claim self-defense. You lose all of those affirmative defenses because of the fighting words doctrine. On the other hand, if, God forbid, you end up dead as a result of me having to defend myself from your assault, or you become maimed or injured, I still have all these rights at my disposal. You will be judged in a court of law for the actions and whatever the eventual outcome of this invitation of yours, these fighting words are. And it's going to be a very painful process for you one way or the other. I said, now, considering that and considering that it's a room full of witnesses right here, do you still invite me to go outside with you, or would you like to take that back? It was pretty hilarious. I'm not gonna lie. I'm glad that don't normally happen, but you know how it is. You're in that situation, you get kind of heated, and sometimes you just have to talk people off the cliff. It was an interesting exchange. Needless to say, he had second thoughts about the situation, and again, it was just a room full of people. Most of them people in there were definitely older, just a lot of older people. And I don't know. I don't particularly like being in that situation, but it does happen in life. And sometimes you just have to kind of throw some words around people like that, and they will think better of their decision right there. So Zach said cutting in line at the grocery store should be a crime. I want to be clear, Zach. I wasn't looking to cut in line. It was not my intention to cut in line. I thought when they opened the doors, it's just everybody go in and start signing up. And apparently that was not the way it was supposed to work out. It just got out of hand. It got out of hand real quick. I will tell you though, Zach, I make sure I go through every effort possible, make sure I don't cut a line, period, especially around here. I can't imagine giving an irate person a long explanation of the situation. Well, let's put it this way. You got to remember, these are not people in their 20s. It's a room full of people that's in there. The guy was not close enough to me to where I couldn't defend myself before I said what I said. And plus I said it very quickly, very firmly. He knew I meant business. It wasn't like I was putting on a long explanation. And when I said those words to him, you could see him just kind of melting and regretting it right there. And it was just an interesting dialogue. But I promise you, it happened just like I told you. Oh, thank you, Julianne. Glad you enjoyed my little story right there. It takes talent to come. Yeah, well, that was my intention. Sometimes people just need to think. Sometimes people just need to dial it down and just see exactly what happens. And the good news is it all worked out. Everybody just it just all kind of stopped, and that was the end of the deal. But that's a real true story. I'm not making that up. So I'm glad you enjoyed it. I know Julianne loved it, so thank you. All right, let's go ahead and get on down to the last scenarios right, because I want to make sure I leave you with the with a firm understanding, at least to the best I can give you a firm understanding as to exactly what's going on. All right, I gave the AI some other things to think about, some of the exact points that we've been talking about during this conversation, right? And I was asking it, is this hyperbole versus truth? I mean, how do we know the difference between just exaggerating versus something's a true threat? And I thought this was kind of interesting. It says context of the word, the phrase delay, deny, depose, you people are next, could indeed be misinterpreted in different ways. Because what it is, I told AI, I interpret this in a civil context, right? It says, if she was merely expressing frustration over the insurance company's action and using hyperbole as a metaphor, then this could be seen as a non-threatening statement. Again, it's going to have to do with context. Hyperbole versus a true threat. In legal terms, hyperbole is typically protected speech. We kind of all knew that, right? Florida law on written terroristic threats. And this is what I was talking about. The law says it's got to be in writing, but not necessarily under the case law. And I went ahead and I asked the chat if indeed this is an overcharge. And of course it's an overcharge, but I wanted to see what would be the possible reasons that this has transpired to the level that has transpired, and especially with the judge doing this. And folks, we've talked about this before. When it comes to human beings, I don't care what your positions are, we don't want to mess up. We don't want to make a mistake. Nobody does. Same thing with the police. Same thing with this judge. Think of it from the judge's perspective. What happens if she granted this woman a very low bond? This woman left her courtroom and ended up acting out in a violent way. It would not look good for the judge. Same thing with the sheriff. What happens if he receives this report from the FBI and he did not take any action pertaining to this report? I can see if I have to find a reason why they would do this, I could say that would be a logical reason. But they've had enough time now to dissect the law. That I know they've been in contact with the DA or the solicitor's office, whoever's prosecuting this particular case, to realize this case does not meet the threshold for a true terroristic threat or some kind of just something that would be chargeable as illegal conduct. It's clearly just does not read to that. But anyway, I want to read you this as we close out this particular subject. It says, pertaining to the judge's $100,000 bond, the $100,000 bond in this case seems excessive, especially for someone with no criminal history and no apparent threat to public safety. Judges are bound by legal standards, but they are also influenced by their own judgment and the context in which decisions were made. Here are some factors that might explain the judge's decision. Risk aversion, we just talked about that. Public perception, that makes sense. They want to be perceived as tough on crime. And again, this is another subject we talk about. I don't know why we have elected judges. This is such a bad idea, ladies and gentlemen. Elected judges, we should not have these. We need some kind of system where a person can do what's best in the interest of judges, not worrying like they did in the Fannie Willis case with Judge Scott McAfee, of doing what he thinks will allow him to win the upcoming election. Just a terrible idea. And I think the United States of America is the only place in the world that has elected judges. I'd have to check on that, but I believe that it is correct. It also says the influence of politics, of course, that would be, and the same thing would go for the police. But it's so clearly an overcharge in this particular situation. I don't think anybody could reasonably say it is not overcharged. It says $100,000 bail for a 42-year-old mother with children at home who has no criminal history, disproportionately high, especially considering. Now, get this. This is something I want to make sure I point out. In Florida, the normal bond for a rapist is $75,000. This woman has a $100,000 bond, which is just ridiculous, just absolutely ridiculous. And by the way, I did make sure I copied everything from the affidavit into this as I had ChatGPT kind of give me their thoughts and kind of rebuttal my specific thoughts on this particular thing here. So I hope that shed some light on it. So if you're in this situation, you need to make sure you don't talk to the police. That's number one. Make sure if you're ever dealing with a law enforcement officer, you try not to get scared, because, my friends, when you get scared, when you get nervous, that's when you make poor decisions. And listen, even if you did commit a crime, right? Don't misunderstand me. I don't want to help people that are criminals get away with criminal activity. That's not my intention. But why is it that a son or daughter of a judge or a police officer or a solicitor or an AG would commit a crime and they get a year in jail, and then somebody that doesn't have that benefit of knowledge or doesn't have that background commits exactly the same crime and they're doing 15 years in custody? That's not fair. That shouldn't be that way. So that's my rationale behind all this. And listen, there are a lot of people in prison today that are truly innocent. I know that's hard to believe, but it's true. If you understand what beyond a reasonable doubt means, think of it like I'm not a big sports fan, but let's just use a football illustration. You got the 0 to 100 yard line, right? Well, generally, beyond a reasonable doubt means we're going to take it to the 97% yard line. Well, that means there's 3 yards. You know, if you carry my illustration out, basically 3% of people that are convicted are innocent, is what this means. And if you figure right now today, I believe there are 3.2 million incarcerated people. You're looking between 300,000, 350,000 people in prison today that did not commit the crime that they're serving time for. No system is perfect, but just understand, whatever the standard is, means that many innocent people are going to be caught up into the situation. So I just want to make sure you're aware of that. And we all have to think about that. I know when I first came across those statistics, to say the least, it was utterly shocking for me. But I just don't want to see people going to prison for more time than they should. And I definitely don't want to see innocent people becoming incarcerated because they got nervous and they said the wrong thing to a police officer. I think it's really just that simple. Let me check the chat, see if we have any questions on this here. Yes. Okay. Julianne, I love your comments here. This is it. It takes a talent. I appreciate that. You're just blowing all kinds of sunshine at me today. I appreciate that. Interpreting laws even before E, expert, after C is disapproval by science. Okay. Gotcha. Thank you, Zach. I appreciate everybody. Thank you. Thanks for comment. Let's see. Okay. Love it. Great conversation going on today. So I'll make sure I don't miss any comments here. Even the people falsely convicted probably committed several crimes for which they were never caught. You know, Zach, please don't take this as I'm trying to berate you over this comment. I had a sister of mine tell me something like that too. And I just don't understand why people think that. I mean, I think it's a human reaction to soften the blow to the mind that, okay, this person is in jail, they're innocent, but I'm sure they did something that was worthy of them being there. But that's not how the system is supposed to work. First of all, we have no way to know that. I actually had a sister of mine tell me one time that if you have a negative interaction with the police, or if you've been put in jail, it's kind of what we're talking about here for something you did not do. You had to do something somewhere along the lines to come within their radar. And listen, I just think some people are privileged to the point to where they're not used to this type of abuse, this type of nonsense. And listen, I don't want to sound like one of these racist people saying, oh, it's this group that gets hammered, not that group. I don't care what somebody looks like. The law should be blind for everybody. It should be equal, truly, under law for everybody. And Zach, even if they did something before that they probably never got caught for, that doesn't mean they should be incarcerated for something they did not do. I think that's what I'm trying to say, and I think you appreciate that too. So, no, I don't think I hammered you too bad, Zach. I think you'll be all right. I just wanted to point that out. That right, we all feel bad if someone is in prison that does not or was not guilty of the crime, but I don't think it's okay to say, hey, I'm sure they did something, because you know what? If you use that measure, we could probably all be in jail for something. You know what I'm saying? There's so many laws right now on the books. Do you know they don't know how many laws there are? Nobody knows the number. You would think you would know how many laws there are, right? We don't. We don't know how many laws are on the book. And it's just something we all have to be aware of. I know you're all right, Zach. I know you're all right. I don't think I hurt your feelings too bad. So, but I will say I appreciate the a little bit of banter back and forth. It gets kind of boring if everybody just agreeing all the time, right? I think it's important whether you're challenging my thoughts, my beliefs, or I'm challenging back in return. I think it's all in with the goal of education and trying to make us all better people one way or the other. And to, FJB, you're exactly right. Biden give everybody a pardon. That's a good way to look at it. You got Hunter Biden did all the nonsense that he did, and you see he received this generous pardon. And I think we're all going to be happy right around January 20th when Donald Trump returns back to office, and we're going to see all these J6 hostages pardoned. It's not a perfect system, no doubt about it. I think my goal is just to make sure everybody's aware of the system that we have. And you guys know I'm a patriot. I bleed red, white, and blue. We all love America. I just think things can be better. We should never stop striving for things to be better, to point out the problems that we have. It's not like I'm anti anything. I just want everybody to be okay. I want everybody to understand the justice that we have and how our justice system works. And I think it's important to point out egregious examples of the what I guess you can call it a miscarriage of justice. That's what I hear in the news all the time. This is truly, in my opinion, a miscarriage of justice. This woman should not be incarcerated because she echoed words like deny, defend, whatever. I mean, just kind of nonsense. By that standard, I should be in jail. I've countlessly told people, oh, I'm not going to tolerate that. We're going to be, heading for litigation, or we're going to take action. I mean, it wouldn't be like threatening, like I'm going to, kill you or something. Clearly, that's over the line. But threats in general are legal, and they're just assuming that what she said is somehow violent or was meant to be violent, and clearly that was not her intention. It's clear from the affidavit that was not her intention. And again, that's just the way that I perceive it. And let me leave you with this thought on this case too. And this shows even more how this is hyperbole, and she should not be charged for it. It's two reasons. Because of what the judge said. She said, well, in the current heightened present situation that we're in, to me, that's hyperbole, because right now people have this heightened sense of stress over this situation. And in my opinion, think of this is the most clear evidence of it. If this would have been 10, 15 days ago, and they read, or somebody was told deny, delay, defend, or whatever, there would not be no warrant for her arrest. She would never have been charged. She would not be in jail right now. It's only because of how events came out that she's in jail, right? I hope that makes sense. Hope everybody kind of gets where what I'm talking on there. But thank y'all for your comment on that. Thanks, JB. Julianne, Texas, RA big one, taking a chunk out of our lives next year. I know we will see some, man, we got so many changes coming up. It's going to be a great 2025. I'm very excited about it. Very excited for the things that are happening in our future. Zach, I'm not coming back until next time. Thank you, Zach. I know that you'll be around sooner or later with us. We had a good time today on Mark's channel at 4:00, I think it was. So enjoyed listening to Mark and enjoyed visiting with Zach as always. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and land it as of right now. I want to tell everybody thanks again for being here. Thanks for Julianne, Zach, my friend Mark, FJB. I appreciate all you guys being here. Thanks for Rosemarie for being here. And I know I'm going to forget somebody, and I want to apologize ahead of time that I forgot to call you out. But everybody that participated in the conversation, I truly appreciate it. So listen, may the Lord be blessing each and every one of you. May the anointing of his Holy Spirit be with you each and every day, especially until we meet again. Thanks for being with me. I definitely appreciate it. Always say, keep that mind free. Never give up. Till next time, my friends, I am J.R. Dukes.